Well, good morning. My name is Mindy Cheek. I'm on stage with Mallori, Smyers from Development, and Andrew Leech from our management group. And we're going to continue the conversation on aging in place. And just full disclaimer, every year we draw straws to see who goes after John. We lost. So here we go. We're going to continue talking about aging in place. And aging in place isn't anything new, right? We've been talking about it for several years. Obviously, everybody's talking about it. We just got back recently from the Argentum conference, I think it was in May, and all of the big providers are talking about it. How are we going to market and sell to that consumer of the future? What are they going to look like? What are they going to want? What are their desires, their needs? Expectations are high. They're highly educated. If they're not, their adult children are. And so they're looking for things that maybe are a little bit different than what we're used to selling. So we have to continue looking at our overall design and how we market and how we deliver services to people a little bit differently. We always think, how many of you in here think that you're flexible? Not physically, but like in your operations. We think we're flexible, right? But are we? How many of you would consider yourselves adaptable? We think we're adaptable, but are we? Do we really understand the operations that goes on? We know in our minds, we think, oh, we know what this consumer looks like. We know the programs that we need to put in place. We do all of those things. So we market them and we sell them, and then residents move in, and then do we ever go back and check to make sure that we're actually delivering on the programs and services that we're selling? So these are some things, the highlights that we've got to pay really close attention to. We have to make sure that we understand the future consumer, we understand what they want, we put the programs in place, but then we have to really make sure that we're delivering on those services, because that's what we're selling, that's what they want, and that's when they're going to stay. We have a lot of different opinions about aging in place. Some of us are taking a little bit of a backward look at the continuum of care model. So we have the continuum care model, the traditional IL, AL, memory support, skilled nursing, rehab. Some new properties are doing away or downsizing their skilled, right? Because they're able to offer those long-term care services in assisted living. And we have newer communities like Bay Vita and San Antonio that are building IL with memory care, and assisted living is in phase 2 because they're able to deliver with third-party providers or their own providers assisted living services and independent living. So everybody's looking at this in a little bit of a different way. If we took a look at adult children, future prospects, professional referral sources, if we polled and surveyed all of the different people that have different opinions, if we surveyed all of you and asked the question, what does aging in place mean to you? Do you think that we would all come up with the same answer? Maybe some. Do we think there's some different answers out there on how we're delivering aging in place? Aging in place as it pertains to senior living really kind of means that a resident wants to remain in a familiar and comfortable environment as they age, even as their needs progress or evolve. As we survey, and John spoke about this, adult children and future prospects, the aging in place model is very attractive. People want it. They don't want to move. That's why people want to stay in their homes. They don't want to move to a new place. They want the continuity of the familiar environment and the continuity of care in their own home. The challenge for us is how to take all of the differing opinions that we have on aging in place, sit down, create a model, design it, and then deliver on the programs to make sure that we are actually delivering and achieving the expectations of our future prospects. Now I want you to consider something for a second. Think about that future prospect. Maybe it is a successful business person, somebody that is used to being the boss, somebody that's used to calling all the shots. Anybody here in the room? I don't know, maybe some of you. You're not afraid to, or this person is not afraid to let their opinions be known. They have a specific ideology of what retirement living looks like. They're not afraid to tell you what that looks like, and they really want any problems they have or challenges they have, they want to bring it to you, and then they want a result, and they want it fixed immediately. This person is well educated. This person has high expectations. This person knows what they want, when they want it. They don't want to be told something can't be done, but how it can be done. They like quiet dinners with their family, but they also like to congregate with their friends. They want to continue to be educated. Sound familiar? This resident of the future may look something like this. And he wants to know, can you meet my expectations? Because they're high. I could have put any of your pictures on this screen, and it would have meant the same thing, right? I'm thinking of the Debbie McNeils in the room. Not to call you out, Debbie, but high expectations. So think for a second, if you designed a senior living community and programming to meet your needs and your expectations, what would that look like? That's how we have to think about it in the future. Our challenge may seem impossible, right? Because we're not going to be able to achieve everybody's expectations because we all have different ones. But our challenge is how do we figure out how to make it happen? That's what we're challenged with. So rethinking the future resident, because they all have different opinions and they all want different things. A common thing we're going to hear in this presentation and other presentations is that we have to continue to be competitive. We have to continue to be flexible and adaptable. We have to make sure that we're ensuring safety and security for our residents, offering socialization so they have a successful aging experience. Our residents have always wanted to continue. They're always going to want choice, and John talked about that. Choice equals what? I got a few more, but not many, John. I'm sorry. I'm trying. The biggest competition we have is our home, or is the resident's home. So everybody wants to stay in their home. How many of you in here don't want to leave your home? You're going to stay in your home. Nobody? Great. Y'all are all future prospects. You're an easy sell. We've already sold you. But think about the home. The home's going to become more and more challenging to stay. Why is that? Because we have a huge shortage of healthcare workers, right? And adult children are working. I mean, the time when you have, that adult daughter that stays home and doesn't have to work is really shrinking. So you have people that are more adult children are working, and they don't have time maybe to care for mom or dad. And so it's going to become even more difficult for those residents to stay at home. So those are the people that, we have to make sure that we're selling to and marketing to and attracting. Because if you think about your senior living communities, you have scale. If somebody in dining doesn't show up, do you just not have dining that day? It's audience participation. I hope you would have dining, right? You're going to have dining because somebody's going to step in and somebody's going to fill in the gaps, right? If you have somebody that doesn't show up that would deliver medications, are you just not going to deliver medications that day? No, Debbie, thank you. You're going to have a nurse step in and deliver medications. We have scale. We have the insurance that, these prospective residents need, and that somebody's going to care for them. They're going to have the socialization they deserve. They're going to have the continuity they deserve and the programming that's going to help them successfully age. When we think about key aspects of aging in place, it's really nothing new. It doesn't really matter how you design your communities. Really, all the aspects need to be there. So you still have a continuum of care, whatever that looks like. If it's IL to memory care and that's the makeup of your community, then how are you going to offer assisted living services? Is that through third-party providers? Is that through your own in-home personal care employees? But you have to figure that piece out. Customized care plans, same thing. None of this is new. We're all doing this, but we have to continue to do it well. Mallori's going to talk about the designing spaces and the accessibility of those. If you're not going to offer higher levels of living in your community, how are you designing your communities today to offer accessibility for those that are aging in place that require more care or require more services? We're seeing more and more and more residents move into our communities with Parkinson's disease. It's taking over in strides over dementia and Alzheimer's in some regard. So lots of Parkinson's. Are you set up and designed to handle a resident with Parkinson's disease? These are all the questions that we need to be asking. Health and wellness. John spoke a lot about wellness. The residents want wellness programs. As we look at our communities, do we have spaces in our communities for wellness clinics? Or if we're partnering with third-party providers to come in and offer and deliver medical services that are for our independent living residents, do we have the availability and the spaces in order to do that? And then supportive services. Again, housekeeping, laundry, how are we offering those? How can we market that and sell that to that consumer? And how are we making sure that we're delivering? Key opportunities that we have is really coordination of care. I've heard several stories, and I heard one yesterday with a community that has third-party providers coming into their community to offer services to their residents. In this case, it was an assisted living resident. And the communication and the coordination of care between that third-party provider and that community, there was a breakdown. So the communication wasn't good. So as we talk about coordination of care, how are we communicating with our third-party providers to make sure that we know what type of care they're actually delivering? And what type of care model our residents actually need? And are they receiving the care that they actually need? And do we really understand what's going on with them? So coordination of care is very important. Payer source and insurance, we've talked about traditional Medicare and Med Advantage plans till we are blue in the face. Anybody tired of Medicare Advantage plans?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Me too. But there's other things to consider. So you think about that resident that doesn't understand how they can afford to move into senior living. Maybe they think that the cost is way out of their range. We have other providers that can help them with that financial conversation, working with providers that offer bridge loans and VA aid and attendance. And just because you think, oh, our rents are really high and somebody couldn't afford or couldn't move in if they qualified for VA aid and attendance, that's not true. We have a lot of opportunities out there that we should be looking at and making sure that we're connecting our future residents with providers that can offer these type of services. When we talk about staff and training, I look at a lot of websites. And the websites that, have all of these different programs that our communities are offering. And sometimes I wonder, and then we get in and we say, are you really offering and delivering on these programs that you have in your marketing materials? And is your staff really trained in order to handle this type of care or this type of service? Maybe it's not care. Maybe it's just concierge services or dining options. But making sure that what we're marketing is truly what we're delivering. That's going to be key. It is key now. It's going to really be key as we look at our future prospects. And then balancing that independence with care. People want to stay independent. They want to have choice and control, but they want to continue their independence. They don't want to be told that they can't live somewhere because they require too much care. So how do we balance that independence with care is really going to be important as we look into the future. Well, now. So how do we implement it all? Assessments. We're all doing assessments. Initial assessments, whether it's a FaceTime assessment or a Zoom assessment, but really understanding, are we really truly doing great assessments to where we really understand all the aspects of that resident and their needs? Can they truly live independently? Can we really take care of them and take care of their needs? And then the regular assessments ongoing. How often are we delivering those? How are we communicating what we're finding to our staff and our team members to make sure that we have the training available to our team to really deliver on those services? Resident and family involvement is very important. Regular communication with family members so they really truly understand what's going on with their loved ones. Even in independent living. How many residents do you have living in independent living that require care? I've seen your independent livings. I would be raising my hand if I were you. There's a lot, right? Because people don't want to move. So communication, regular communication with family members is really key. And then the benefits. This is where we have to really sell the benefit. So people want to age in place, and one of the key things that we have to consider is they want to age in place because they want a familiar environment. They want the continuity of knowing that I know the team members here, I know the residents. I don't have to get up and I don't have to move to another location or to another community because you're able to manage my care. So a familiar environment is key when we talk about aging in place. It allows for certainty and reduced stress when someone doesn't have to pack up their things and move, or move to a whole new place where it's unfamiliar to them. And it's about an improved quality of life. So all of these things we need to be marketing and selling, but we need to make sure that we're actually delivering them and doing them and providing the services. So it's going to be key as we move forward. I heard a story from Larry Lord last night. He's soon to be board chair for Canterbury Court, and he shared a story with me about his brother who moved into a community in Virginia, correct? And this community probably sold great dining options and we can accommodate care, but his brother and his wife have a gluten allergy and they are very strict gluten-free diets. And the community could not, at the end of the day, could not provide that service. And so they moved out. And they moved out of senior living altogether, right? So they're living independently. So it's these type of things that we really have to look at, because does anybody think that gluten-free is going away? No. And all of the other dining and special diets and all of the other wellness activities, it's going to become more and more prevalent. We're going to hear about it more and more. So in thinking about how your dining options work, how your wellness options are, we really have to focus on how are we delivering these services and are we doing it well and where can we improve? Because those are going to be key things that we're going to have to consider moving forward. That's how we gain trust. The value in senior living, the cost, John talked about it, the cost is not going down. If anything, it's going up. But when you really break down all of the costs associated with senior living, and you think through, these are all of the savings that you have, this is everything that's included, this is everything we're providing, along with the companionship and the idea of community and the idea of making friends and living with like-minded people. Some unlike-minded people probably too, but it's the importance of friendship. It's the importance of successful aging is when you can do it with other people. So all important key benefits of how we sell your communities, but we have to make sure that we're delivering on those promises too. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mallori, who's going to talk through the design and what we're looking at on new design. So.
Great, thanks, Mindy. So Mindy has really set up who that resident of the future is, how we're going to be needing to market to them, but what are we designing that we are going to be marketing to them, and how does that look different in the future and when you're considering an aging in place model. So on the screen, you'll see a pretty nicely appointed, it's a rendering of an independent living residence. Looks nice, looks pretty standard, I guess, across a lot of the projects that we've seen recently. Beautiful. But when we're thinking about an aging in place model, what other accommodations might need to be made in this residence that could help them live there longer? So I'm going to talk through a few different thoughts and options that we've been bouncing around. So these are a couple options on screen. These could be added in the design process. They could be retrofitted into a future or into an existing community. You could look at them in a personalization option, or we could even just look at an infrastructure base that's built into a design. So I'll go through these options. In the top left corner, you see lighted baseboards. Many people experience macular degeneration as they grow older, meaning that they're having a harder time seeing. The idea of a lighted baseboard helps them navigate their spaces easier, and it's something that could be added with somewhat of a custom baseboard with an LED light strip. That's something that could be a great add, either in a personalization option or even a built-in, just get the infrastructure in there in the beginning. Could also be retrofitted into those existing communities. That would be a great way to age in place with that eyesight deteriorating over time. In the middle top, you see something with just smartphones, smart applications. Having those smart switches or smart outlets throughout the community and throughout your actual residences is going to allow somebody to age in place and possibly be able to access all the new amenities and the technology that come on board. So having that backbone into your community and into those units, but also really at that resident level of touching and having those plugs that I can control from my phone is a great way to start to implement those. Something that I see in communities already pretty common on the far right is just like the pull-out drawers in a cabinet. I think about getting into my Tupperware cabinet and it is a disaster. I am on my hands and knees and pulling all the things out. My 10-month-old is now getting into those things on the ground. I can imagine this would be helpful for me. I can only imagine how much more helpful it would be for somebody that's aging in their home. So having those pull-out drawers, maybe only one is a standard. You could add additional ones as upgrades. You can have that be a personalization option. But if somebody's going to be here for 10, 15, 20 more years than you anticipated them to be there, they need options that don't have them on their hands and knees. Another option that is pretty low cost is a touch faucet. We all are going to have probably more arthritic problems with how much we use our cell phones and how much we have handheld devices. So I think that just that touch faucet is a great addition to the kitchen. I think it's nice anyway to have, but it's nice as you have the harder time getting around. We already have levered doors through most of our spaces, but this is another way just to add that value in your community. In the middle, on the bottom row, you have a barn door. So we're familiar with pocket doors, and I'm sure you've heard from some of the design team that those are not super fun to coordinate as far as the electrical that is in that wall, mechanical, plumbing that could be in the wall when you start to work with a pocket door. It's also a little bit more difficult to navigate structurally. Pocket doors are just as great, of course. They're just more of a design challenge, I should say. A barn door is a great addition, can still be quite elegant, and definitely a good addition as somebody continues to age. So maybe it's not there in the beginning, you could add it later. But it gives that really accessible space in those harder to use areas like your bathroom, or in those smaller spaces like your bathroom or a small closet, things of that nature, where you really might need that space when you have a cane, when you have a walker, or if you're even bringing a wheelchair now into these independent living residences. And then on the far bottom right corner, you see the built-in shower bench. Again, I wouldn't say that a lot of people aren't doing this, but maybe we're not doing it as a standard across all bathrooms. And I think that we need to start looking at that if we expect somebody to be here longer. Doing it just in the primary bathroom, I would say, has been a standard among some of my projects recently, and that is a great standard to have. But we even need to look at the secondary bathrooms, knowing that your residents are going to be here for a longer period of time, and thinking that they could be bringing in their own bench, a little scary. So I think that building this in is a good cost-effective way, surprisingly, that can elevate that space and allow for somebody a pretty nice area in a very slip and hazardous space. So you said, how much does this cost? It can cost a lot. And when you start to multiply this across 100 plus independent living residences, that's not an easy ask, right? But so that's $7,000 to $12,000 per independent living residence between, high to low. But when you're looking at that compared to their entrance fee, that's only about 1% to 2% of the entrance fee that you're charging for these apartments. So think about the investment that you're making for this resident to last here a lot longer in their time. Also, this is adding about $10 per square foot on this residence. When you're looking at that compared to building out an assisted living residence is going to cost you $50 to $100 more per square foot than what your independent living residence is costing. So think about the value that you can add with a handful of nice, elegant touches that do not sacrifice the elegance, but add the accommodations, the accessibility to the independent living residents so that they can live there longer. This reinforces quality, and maybe this isn't something you put all the way in, but if you're providing some of that infrastructure to add later, it's going to be a great way to allow them to live there longer. So outside the residence, you do have the hallways, you have the corridors. We talked a little bit about somebody bringing in third-party care in your independent living residences. So we're going to have to start to plan for some extra square footage in those spaces. We have to think about somebody with carts and how, well, if I'm 70 years old and somebody down the hall is 90, I might not want to see these medical carts in the middle of my space, right? So we have to think about how those niches might look, how you can design those, how you can have third-party caregiver workstations and spaces where they can kind of go off to the side. Also, the technology is only increasing. We have to start thinking about vacuum robots that are going to be out and about, thinking about where they go to store themselves and hide away. All those things are accommodations that are small, but are going to make a big impact in the design of those spaces in between your residences. So we know that we are selling against the home, right? Everyone wants to stay and age in place in their home. That's what it means to a lot of people when you say aging in place. It says, I'm going to be in my house. So we're still selling against that. But what is really common is that somebody's like, well, I'll just renovate my home. That is going to be probably a $75,000 to $150,000 investment to make some of these accommodations that I've listed on screen. And those are great. And those will get you pretty far. But what that does to the resale value, I don't know if I would want to personally move into a home that's been accommodated for accessibility standards. So I think that you have to talk with the prospects about what that is doing to the value of their own home. And then they don't have the great things that our community still offers, which is the socialization, which is the safety and security that we can build in, which is those technology backbones that we can build in and future-proof our communities. And then also the maintenance-free, worry-free. What I see when I see this house is a lot of maintenance. I see a yard that needs to be mowed, I see flower beds that need to be kept up, and I see some roofs that need to be cleaned off. So I think when you think about selling against the home, we're still doing the same things we do well. We have to keep doing those well to sell against the home. But to know that even when you make all these changes, they still can't meet the expectations that our communities still provide. And we talked a lot about choice. Choice and control. What does that mean in the community of the future? Well, in a lot of your projects, you've probably seen that we don't just have 3 independent living floor plans, 1 cottage plan, and that's it, right? We have a cottage, we have an independent living apartment, we have a townhome, we have a hybrid home, we have all these options, and those are some of the options shown here on screen. You have that apartment where you're close to the commons, you're just a step away. You have the option of a single family cottage where you have a little bit more independence, but you could still just be, down the road or steps away from the commons. You have something in between, a townhome or a hybrid home, stacked flat, manor home. I'm sure you've heard some of those different terms. something in between, something for everyone. The community of the future and those residents of the future are going to expect the variety. They want choice, and they're not just going to want these 4 options. They're going to want 5 floor plans in each of these options, right? So we have to not only set our expectations to that, but set our design friends' expectations to that we're going to have more floor plans, we're going to have more options, and they're going to demand it. And so I've talked a lot about independent living, but assisted living isn't just going to go by the wayside. We're still going to build new assisted living, but we do need to do it well, and we need to change our thoughts about what that means, because right now we've been under this mentality of what we think they want is what they've been wanting, and it's not. It's not meeting the expectation of what they truly desire. An AL resident didn't suddenly lose clothes when they moved from IL to AL. So when you think about us suddenly putting all of their walk-in closet clothes into a reach-in closet, it makes an impact, and they know it, and it's inexpensive real estate, but it means a lot. It makes a big impact, and we need to start to design assisted living residences. If you're going to have them in your community, they need to meet the expectation of the assisted living resident of the future. And that assisted living resident is going to be the same person that you're selling to right now in IL, and they're not easy, right? So these residents are going to want these walk-in closets. They're going to want the opportunity maybe to cook in the handful of these residences. They are going to want to do their laundry, and they might want to step out on a balcony to enjoy a sunrise or sunset. We cannot forget to address the assisted living residents that we're still going to continue to build, that's not going away. And lastly, if we are supporting a longer, healthier life, we need to have wellness-centric commons. Wellness is that buzzword. We're going to continue to hear it throughout these couple days, but we can't skip out on what that means, and it is dimensional. It's not just your fitness and your yoga room that everyone wants to have. It's not just the pickleball courts. It is those classroom spaces. It's how you're utilizing your multi-purpose space. It's the outdoor spaces, and it's that art room that overlooks your campus. You have to think about all the pieces and parts that are funding their mental, their financial, their well-being all together. And I know we call these non-revenue generating spaces. That's really common in the design world, and we're saying it's not revenue generating, so we need to cut back here, we need to cut back there. They're indirect revenue generating spaces, and we have to invest in those spaces when we're looking at a wellness-centric area. And we need to invest in the employees that are serving these spaces as well. That's going to be critical to look at their spaces and make sure that you are the employer of the future, and to appeal to them. So I'm going to pass it on to Andrew, and he'll talk a little bit more about those employees and that investment.
All right, thanks, Mallory. So I'm going to piggyback on this wellness topic a little bit. So I hope you're not sick of hearing about wellness yet, because we're just getting started. Wellness, there's a well-documented trend towards wellness in our industry, right? It's what our consumers want. It's been going on for years now. It's just going to continue. And this has been really well highlighted by a couple recent surveys, one in McKnight's and then one in Senior Housing News, which just really shows that providers are thinking of wellness programming, and how they're going to really install that in their communities. So in a recent McKnight's survey that was done this year, 71% of the respondents plan to adapt a more wellness-centered operation in the next 10 years. Okay? 76% of those organizations plan to expand their wellness activities and programming. 56% of them are going to put more money in their budgets towards wellness, and another 50% of them are going to hire more people for their wellness departments, okay, or their lifestyle departments. When you look at the results of those surveys, researchers really are pointing out to meaningful activities and social connections and support when needed are influencing occupancy and length of stay in our communities. And this is what I want to get at, is influencing this length of stay in our communities. John talked about the difference between lifespan to health span to wealth span. I'm talking about that as well, right? The longer we can keep our residents healthier, in better health, more active, the less dependent on direct care staff they're going to become in our communities, right? A great wellness program is not just run by your lifestyles department. It is far more than that. You saw that really lovely wheel of a graph that Mallori had. I saw a couple people take pictures of it. Wellness is all encompassing, it's holistic. So Mindy talked about gluten-free options in dining, right? That's the bare minimum of what wellness can touch with dining. We're also looking at meal times, we're looking at specialty meals, we're looking at involving cooking, dining into our lifestyles programming, right? Demonstrations, teaching people skills. We're looking at takeaway options, kind of like HelloFresh. You know, I can take those fresh ingredients, I can go back to my unit, I can make this lovely meal that's healthy, keep myself well, moving forward. Physical fitness. It's not just about a gym. I mean, it is a little bit about the gym, because if you don't build the right gym, then you're not going to get the attention. But it's about the programming that goes with that gym too, right? Strength and personal training, balance training, yoga training, all of these things that are normally things we've outsourced in the past, and we're probably going to continue to have to do it in the future. Spirituality is a really big one too. You may be affiliated with a religious organization, you may not be. Even if you are, probably a smaller portion of your residents share that same faith. And so we need to be looking at, what do we do? Do we live stream different denominations into our chapel or our multi-purpose room? Are we going to invite guest speakers from different faiths to come in? Make sure we touch on as many of those residents as we can. And mental and emotional well-being is a big one, right? This is about far more than just a social worker in skilled nursing. This is about people with access to mental health professionals, therapists, people who are traditionally not on our payrolls at all. But the expectation from the consumer that Mindy outlined is we're going to be able to offer these services. And so we're going to have to find a way to do it. And then last but not least, the financial well-being piece, right? Which is giving our residents the tools to be great caretakers of their own finances as they move forward. So that's workshops, that's bringing people in, that's hooking people up with the right tools they need to understand the scams that are going on to the market and keep them very educated and make sure that they can protect their own nest eggs, right? Using some of the fancy words that John used, I'm going to use rethink a bunch as we talk about this, okay? I want to rethink where we're investing our money a little bit. I want to talk about how expensive things are going to get, and absolutely they are, but I want to shift a little bit of money away from our traditional cost centers. We've been in an arms race with nursing wages and salaries for years now, right? And they have been increasing at over 13% a year in the last couple of years, and that is not sustainable for us any longer. Of course, we need these staff in our assisted living, in our memory support, in our skilled nursing, but how we get these staff in the future in this aging in place model may change. We're going to have to partner with agencies. We're going to have to allow residents to bring in their own caregivers. We're going to have to do these things that allow a lot more flexibility for the resident and also for our operations. I want to take some of that money and I want to push it into lifestyles, and I want to push it more into wellness, okay? I review a lot of performas. I review a lot of communities that are, in their pre-openings and looking at their staffing models. A lot of providers in this room are already thinking this way, and they're building lifestyles departments of 10, 12, 13 FTEs, where we haven't been anywhere near that number for a very, very long time. I would be remiss if I did any sort of presentation on the future without talking about technology, okay? True disclaimer here. I am not a technology expert. I don't claim to be a technology expert. I'm proud to say I am the person my dad calls when he accidentally changes the input on his television remote and he needs to get back to HDMI 1. But outside of that, I'm not a coder. But I can tell you, technology is not going to be the be-all and end-all solution for us, but it's going to be a huge part of our success in operating as we get into this more aging in place model. We're going to need to move a little faster, and we're going to need to purchase technologies, and traditionally we haven't been very good at that because tech is expensive, it's difficult to make the right decision, and then oftentimes when we've done it, we haven't implemented it properly, and it's obsolete by the time it gets there, right? We are going to have to invest in tech. Not only that, we're going to have to invest in training tech, and we're going to have to invest in implementing tech. And this is different training than we've been giving our people for years and years and years. This is just going to add to the burden of operating a community like this. But if we don't do it properly, a poorly conceived tech solution that's not done well, not implemented well, not trained on, it's just a fancy paperweight. I think you've all probably had a solution in your communities that's been implemented, and then 6 months later, the one person who had the password, got fired or left or something along those lines. And then all of a sudden you're like, I don't even know how to use this thing anymore, and no one has access to it. All of these things we're gonna have to plan for. Tech is also gonna help us keep people in place healthier longer, right? There are devices right now that are helping people do this. You have a whole bunch of mobility devices, walkers, scooters, lifting devices, lifting assist devices. You also have monitoring devices. Mallori touched on this a little bit. Smart home sensors, check-in sensors, passive sensors, fall sensors. We can go on and on and on. And then wearables. And this is really where the big change in tech is coming as far as healthcare goes. The iWatch, every single time they come out with a new iteration of it, has a different capability, right? The new one can do your blood pressure. It can also do an EKG. It's not long until they're monitoring other vitals, blood glucose, all of these things, producing a lot of great data that is helping people. But right now that data is kind of siloed all over the place, right? So what do? We need a way to take that data and put it all together. AI is all the rage, right? You can't watch a game on TV without every second commercial being, what can AI do for you? And how is AI gonna transform your business? Again, I'm not an expert on AI. This has been, a couple of years talking about it, so I feel like I've learned a lot. But I can tell you that current AI is relatively primitive in where AI is gonna go. So current AI is pretty narrow in its scope, and it can focus on one task. Right? It can look at a form and it can say these fields of this form are missing, and it can do it way faster than a human being can do it. So can it review some of your billing stuff? Can it find human errors? Absolutely. But in not a very long time, AI is going to become just as smart as you or me. And then very quickly after that, it is going to surpass our abilities. And that smarter than human AI is really going to transform how we operate and what we do. Instead of just having, a robot vacuum going around the halls that Mallori's built a nice little niche for, I'm talking about a full-on robotic housekeeper, okay? Instead of having a concierge that's sitting downstairs answering the phones, directing calls, that concierge might be in my mirror as I shave and as I brush my teeth in the morning. And it might be pointing out to me, hey, Andrew, you have 3 doctor's appointments today, but you have no transportation schedule to get to any of those. Can I help you with that? All these things are science fiction right now, but they're coming quick. And they're going to be unavoidable. Mallori talked about building the right backbones for this tech. That's critical right now. We may not know what the tech looks like exactly right now, but we can start by building extra conduit, building extra space, making our networks expandable and scalable. Last but not least, let's talk about the people a little bit. The silver tsunami, the age wave, is here. I've been in senior living for 10 years. We've been talking about this forever and ever and ever. Well, it's here, as John just said, right? Every day, more and more age and income qualified seniors are ready to move in. What's the flip side of that coin? Every day, our workforce is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. They're getting older, they're retiring, they're leaving. This is really the main conflict of any industry in the next 30 years, but especially the service industry and especially our industry. Okay, we are going to be trying to provide for this much many more people with such a smaller pool. And that's hard. So what do we do? How do we get out of this? Well, first I want to focus on what we do well, right? If you are not the preferred employer in your market, you need to take steps to become that person or that operation now. Okay, you need to look at your culture, your benefits. You need to look at your employee as a whole. What do they want? What are they interested in? Our employee is getting older, right? We may have employee residents at our future community. So what do they want? Do they need the same health plan as the 17-year-old kids serving dinners and dining? Probably not. They probably want to go to the doctor a little bit more. They probably want to have a little bit more time off. So we're going to have to balance those things. 2, we have to think outside of our traditional boxes. As an operator, I've stood here for 10 years, absolutely dumping all over agency and saying, you have to get rid of it. You need agency out of your building. It's compromising your care. It's compromising your finances. I'm now here to tell you I was probably wrong all along as I said that. In the future, we're gonna have to have these partners. We're gonna have to partner with care agencies. We're gonna have to partner with health systems because we're not gonna have the scale on our own. So we're gonna need help. We're gonna have to make better use of volunteers. We all had really robust volunteer programs, and then COVID came along, and then our volunteer programs haven't really come back to the same level that they were at before. Not just volunteers from your local community, I'm talking volunteers from in your community. Residents with skill sets who want to teach people life skills, things along those lines. You need to partner with those vocational schools in your market. You need to get interns into your community. People need to see how great of a place you are to work and what you do to take care of people so that they know when they leave, hey, I'm coming here. The successful community of the future is going to have to do a little bit of all these things because we're all going to be fighting for the same smaller pool of workers. So, you heard from Mindy about the demands that our next customer is going to have. Heard from Mallori about how we're going to start to build to try to help this customer stay in place longer. And then a little bit from me on how we're going to try to operate this tangled web that we have weaved. And really, I want you to take away a couple of things. The successful community that has embraced aging in place in the future is going to be really flexible. Flexible in what they offer, flexible in the services they deliver as well. They're also going to be really adaptable, okay? They're going to be able to pivot quicker, faster to the conditions in our market and what's going on. And lastly, they're really going to play to our traditional strengths because those are never going to go away. Safety, security, socialization, and successful aging, not just a place to grow old, okay? Now is the time. We have an opportunity. I encourage you all to think about these things as you go back into your own operations, and really, the time is now for us to act. Thank you very much.